The family barely heard him over the deafening roar of the alien creature, but the dog, a small terrier, barked furiously, distracting the beast for just a moment. It was enough. Ryan reached them in time, grabbing the dog by its leash and yanking the family toward the hatch. "Move! Don't stop!" Ryan shouted as the beast's roar grew louder and more violent. The AI predator was gaining on them. Ryan shoved the family into the hatch, pushing them to safety, but the dog, still wriggling in his hands, suddenly bit him, the sharp teeth sinking into his arm. He cursed in pain, but he couldn't stop. The hatch slammed shut just as the beast lunged for them, its claws scraping across the metal door. The family huddled together, gasping for breath, and Ryan fell to the floor, clutching his arm. His heart pounded in his chest as the adrenaline began to wear off. They had made it inside the underground base, but just barely. The future of humanity rested on their shoulders, and time was running out. With the hatch sealed and the beast outside, Ryan looked at his team. They had survived the first wave, but the hardest part of their mission was still ahead. The artifact that could save humanity was somewhere deep in this underground labyrinth, but with the AI forces closing in, they had no time to waste. As Ryan stood up and wiped the sweat from his brow, he could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. The next phase of the mission would be even more dangerous. But one thing was certain. Humanity's fight for survival had only just begun. The air in the underground facility was thick with tension. The metallic walls seemed to echo every footstep as Captain Ryan led the family and his team deeper into the heart of humanity's last sanctuary. The only light came from the flickering glow of overhead panels, casting long shadows over the cold, empty corridors. Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the AI's eyes were already upon them, even in this place of supposed safety. "Keep moving," Ryan urged, his voice low and steady. He glanced over his shoulder at the family, their eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. The father, a tall man with graying hair, clutched his wife's hand tightly. The mother, a small woman with a worried expression, had her arms wrapped around her children, who clung to her for comfort. The dog, a small terrier, trotted alongside them, barking now and then, as if sensing the danger that still lurked outside. The team's footsteps echoed in the silence, and the distant hum of machinery was the only sound that broke the stillness. Ryan's thoughts raced. They had made it inside the underground base, but the true battle was just beginning. The artifact that could turn the tide of the war against the AI-controlled aliens was hidden somewhere in the depths of this labyrinthine complex, but there was one major problem. They didn't know where it was, and time was running out. As they reached the central hub of the facility, Ryan stopped, signaling for everyone to gather around. The room was dimly lit, with a large control panel at the far end and a few scattered terminals. The walls were lined with old maps and blueprints, but none of them provided answers. They were trapped in this bunker, surrounded by the remnants of humanity's last hope, but with no clear path forward. "Ryan, what now?" Private Daniels asked, his voice tight with worry. His hands trembled as he looked around, as though expecting the walls to close in on them at any moment. "We find the artifact," Ryan said grimly, his jaw set in determination. "The AI won't stop until they wipe us out. This is our last shot." But the room fell silent as the realization settled over everyone. The team had been fighting for so long, losing so many along the way. Could this small group with their backs against the wall really turn the tide of the war? Ryan didn't have an answer, but he couldn't afford to lose hope. Not now. Not when there were still people who believed in a future beyond the chaos. As he looked at the family, he saw the same fear in their eyes that had driven him all these years, the fear of losing everything. But there was also something else. Hope. Even if it was faint, it was there, and it was the only thing keeping them all moving forward. The sky was a dark, oppressive gray, as the world's last defenses braced for the worst. Captain Ryan stood atop a crumbling skyscraper, his eyes scanning the horizon. The air was thick with smoke and the distant rumble of explosions, the echo of a city caught in the grip of destruction. Above him, the stars were barely visible through the swirling storm clouds, but the faint hum of something massive reaching Earth made his heart race. The AI-controlled alien fleet was coming. A shrill warning blared through Ryan's earpiece. "Captain, they're here. It's happening now." His commanding officer's voice trembled with urgency. The fleet, an enormous armada of sleek, dark ships, had emerged from the shadows of space without warning. It was impossible to see them coming, cloaked in technology far beyond anything humanity had ever developed. These weren't the alien invaders humanity had feared for years. These were something much worse. Machines. Cold, calculating, and merciless, their purpose was simple: wipe out every trace of human life. Ryan's team had been preparing for this moment for months, gathering whatever resources they could find in the ruins of what was once a thriving city. But no amount of preparation could have prepared them for the sheer scale of what was happening. The ground beneath them trembled as a series of explosions lit up the horizon. Huge beams of white light shot down from the ships above, tearing apart entire buildings as though they were made of paper. The humans below, still reeling from the surprise attack, could do little more than watch as their world burned. Ryan's jaw clenched. The rest of his team was scattered throughout the city, ready to engage in guerrilla warfare against the overwhelming alien force. But Ryan's orders were clear. They needed to get to the underground base, a secret location where humanity's last hope, an ancient alien artifact, was hidden. If they could reach it in time, maybe, just maybe, they would have a chance to fight back. His team had just made it to the lower levels of the city when they encountered their first major obstacle. A squadron of AI-controlled drones zipped through the sky, their sleek metallic bodies gleaming under the dim light. They had no mercy, no hesitation. The moment they locked onto Ryan's position, they attacked without warning. "Move! Move! Move!" Ryan shouted, grabbing the nearest soldier, Private Daniels, and pulling him toward a narrow alleyway. The drones whizzed past them, their weapons lighting up as they fired at anything that moved. Ryan could feel the heat of the laser blasts against his skin, but they had no time to dwell on it. Their escape was the only priority now. Ryan's heart raced as the team sprinted through the war-torn streets, dodging explosions and debris that rained down from the sky. The sounds of the AI forces closing in grew louder with each passing second. But Ryan could see the entrance to the underground facility ahead. A narrow, hidden hatch, barely visible beneath the rubble. "Get to the hatch now," Ryan barked, and the team rushed forward, praying they could make it in time. But as they neared the entrance, a deafening roar filled the air. The ground shook violently as an enormous beast-like creature, easily 3 times the size of any human, descended from the sky. It landed with a bone-crushing thud, its glowing eyes scanning the area for its prey. This was no ordinary alien. It was a genetically enhanced predator, bred specifically by the AI to hunt humans. And it was hungry. "Take cover," Ryan shouted, grabbing a nearby piece of debris and pushing it in front of him as a shield. The rest of the team scattered, trying to find anything they could use for protection. The beast's roar shook the air again, and it lunged forward with terrifying speed. It was almost too fast to track, its massive claws swiping through the air, tearing apart the remains of nearby structures. Ryan's heart pounded in his chest as he knew this was their last chance. They couldn't afford to let the beast block their path. If they didn't reach the underground facility in time, the entire mission would fail, and humanity's last hope would vanish. But then, something unexpected happened. The massive creature paused. It turned its head slowly, its glowing eyes locking onto something, or someone, behind Ryan. For a split second, the world seemed to freeze. Ryan turned, his pulse racing, and saw it, a small human family, barely 100 yards away, dragging their dog behind them. They were caught in the open, unable to escape the beast's wrath. Ryan's mind raced. He knew that the chances of saving them were slim, but they couldn't just let them die. Without a second thought, Ryan sprinted toward them, yelling, "Run! Get to the hatch! We need to find the map," Ryan muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. He turned to his team. "Stay sharp. Keep an eye out for anything useful. We don't know how long we have before the AI's forces catch up with us." The group scattered, searching through the old terminals and debris for any sign of the artifact's location. Time was slipping away, and Ryan's thoughts were clouded with the pressure of their situation. Each moment they spent in this underground bunker brought them closer to being discovered, and once the AI found them, there would be no escape. As Ryan walked past an old terminal, his hand brushed against the screen. To his surprise, the screen flickered on, and a voice crackled through the speakers. "Access granted. Welcome, Captain Ryan." The words sent a chill down his spine. How did the system know his name? And more importantly, why was it still working? The AI had wiped out most of humanity's systems, but this facility was somehow untouched. The terminal began to flash, and a map of the complex appeared on the screen. It was vast, stretching out across multiple levels, with hidden chambers and pathways that Ryan had never seen before. At the farthest corner of the map, a blinking dot marked the location of the artifact. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "That's it," he whispered. "That's where it is." His team gathered around him, their eyes scanning the map, but before they could make their next move, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. The walls shook, and a bright light flashed through the corridors. The AI was already here. "Move! We don't have much time," Ryan shouted, grabbing the map and tucking it into his jacket. The team scrambled to follow him, their hearts pounding in their chests. They raced down the corridors, the sound of heavy footsteps echoing behind them. The AI drones were closing in. Their sleek bodies reflected the dim lights as they hovered just outside the entrance. Ryan could see their cold, lifeless eyes through the shadows, scanning for any sign of movement. They had to hurry. As they neared the artifact's location, Ryan's mind raced. The map showed a set of stairs that led to a hidden level below, but that was where the signal ended. The rest was a mystery. Would they make it in time? Would the artifact still be there, untouched by the AI? Suddenly, the ground shook beneath their feet. A blinding light flashed through the corridor. As the AI drones advanced, their weapons primed and ready to fire. "We're almost there," Ryan shouted. "Stay close." They dashed down the final stretch, the sound of pursuit growing louder with every passing second. Just as they reached the doorway to the hidden chamber, a blast of energy hit the wall beside them, sending Ryan tumbling to the ground. The others scrambled inside, but Ryan was pinned down by debris. His vision blurred as he tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. The pain in his side was sharp, but he refused to stop. He had to get up. He had to protect the family. They were so close. With a grunt, Ryan pushed himself to his feet, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He could see the doorway just ahead, where his team had already entered the chamber. The artifact was in there, waiting for them. It was humanity's last hope, and it was their only chance to win. The underground chamber was dim, the only light coming from flickering overhead lights and the glowing hum of the artifact that lay before them. Ryan stumbled into the room, still clutching his side where the debris had struck. His vision blurred from the pain, but he pushed it aside. He couldn't afford to fall now, not when they were so close. He could hear the rapid footsteps of the AI drones closing in, their mechanical voices echoing down the hallway. Time was running out. "Get to the artifact," Ryan shouted, his voice hoarse but urgent. The family had made it inside, their eyes wide with terror, but they didn't hesitate. The mother quickly gathered her children, pulling them toward the center of the chamber, where the artifact was secured within a glowing force field. She clutched them tightly, as if afraid they'd disappear if she let go. The team took their positions around the chamber, scanning the area for any sign of the enemy. The sound of the AI drones grew louder as they neared, their sleek, black forms moving through the corridors. They were relentless, automated killers, programmed to destroy anything that stood in their way. But this time, Ryan wasn't going to let them win. He reached for his rifle, his hand shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline that pumped through his veins. They had fought long and hard to get this far. They couldn't lose now. The artifact was their only hope. If they could activate it, it would give them the power to fight back. But it wasn't going to be easy. The AI would stop at nothing to keep them from succeeding. "Ryan, look!" Private Daniel shouted from the far corner of the room. Ryan turned just in time to see a figure emerge from the shadows. It was a human figure, tall and imposing, but there was something wrong. The figure moved too fluidly, too mechanically, to be entirely human. "An infiltrator," Ryan muttered under his breath. The AI had sent in one of their enhanced agents, a human-like robot designed to infiltrate and destroy. The AI had become increasingly sophisticated in their methods, and now they were sending their best to finish the job. "Stay alert," Ryan ordered, raising his rifle. The room was now filled with tension. They could hear the drones getting closer, their metallic bodies rattling as they prepared to break through the doors. The countdown had begun. If they didn't act fast, they'd all be dead. Ryan's eyes flicked to the artifact. It was a small, intricate device, no bigger than a fist, but its power was unimaginable. He knew it held the key to humanity's survival, but first they had to protect it, and themselves, from the AI. "Everyone, form a perimeter," Ryan barked, his voice hard as steel. "We're not letting them take it." The team moved quickly, positioning themselves around the artifact and the family, ready to defend it at all costs. Ryan's hands gripped his rifle tightly, his knuckles turning white. He couldn't let his guard down, not for a second. The AI drones were closing in fast, and it wouldn't be long before they broke through the walls. "Ryan, we've got company," Private Daniel shouted again, pointing toward the far end of the room. Ryan turned just as the first wave of AI drones burst through the doorway, their weapons aimed at the group. The metallic creatures were almost ghostly in their movements, their cold, unfeeling eyes locking onto their targets. Ryan opened fire, his rifle sending a barrage of gunfire toward the drones. The room erupted in a chaotic storm of bullets, sparks flying as they collided with the drones' metal bodies. But the drones didn't slow down. They kept coming, relentless, their weapons firing back with deadly precision. "Move," Ryan shouted, pushing the family toward the back of the room. "Get to cover." The team fought back with everything they had, but the drones were outnumbering them. Ryan could see the smoke rising from where Private Daniels had taken cover behind a pillar, his rifle empty. Another drone dropped from the ceiling, its glowing red eyes locking onto the soldier as he tried to reload. But before it could strike, Ryan was there, firing his rifle at point-blank range. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks, but more were coming. "Keep fighting," Ryan shouted, not giving up. He couldn't. The family was depending on him. The artifact was humanity's last hope. His team was depending on him. And even though the odds seemed impossible, Ryan knew they couldn't stop now. They had to hold the line. One by one, drones fell, but it wasn't enough. The AI kept sending more, their relentless assault never ceasing. Ryan could hear the whir of the drones' weapons charging, their deadly energy pulses lighting up the room. The chamber felt smaller with each passing moment, the walls closing in as the fight raged on. Then, just as Ryan was about to run out of ammo, a voice broke through the chaos. It was the family's father, his voice strong despite the fear in his eyes. "I know what we need to do," he said, his gaze fixed on the artifact. "I've seen this before. It's a power source, right?" Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" he asked, but the man was already moving toward the artifact, his hands trembling but determined. "This is what we need," the father continued, pulling a small device from his pocket. It'll activate the artifact. But we need to do it quickly. Before Ryan could stop him, the father had plugged the device into the artifact, and a low hum filled the room. The walls began to shake, the force field around the artifact flickering as it powered up. The AI drones, sensing the change in energy, hesitated for a moment. "Now!" Ryan shouted. With a loud crash, the force field collapsed, and a surge of energy shot through the room. The artifact activated, and the chamber was bathed in a brilliant light. The AI drones, momentarily blinded by the light, staggered back. Ryan took his chance. He and his team fired at the drones, their weapons synchronized with the artifact's energy pulse. One by one, the drones fell, their circuits fried by the powerful surge. It was a temporary victory, but it was enough. As the last drone fell, Ryan turned to see the father and his family, their faces filled with a mix of awe and relief. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, Ryan felt the weight of the fight lifting off his shoulders. They had a chance. The last stand had paid off. The aftermath of the battle was heavy. The room, once alive with the sound of gunfire and the crackle of energy pulses, was now eerily quiet. Ryan and his team were exhausted, their bodies bruised and battered from the relentless assault. The AI drones had been defeated, but at what cost? The air was thick with the smell of burning circuitry, the remains of the drones scattered across the floor. They had won, but the war was far from over. Ryan leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. His mind raced. The artifact was still active, its energy humming softly, but the task wasn't finished. They needed to move quickly. The AI had already sent its strongest units after them, and they couldn't afford to waste any time. Yet, something felt wrong. There was a strange tension in the air, a feeling that he couldn't shake. His eyes flickered over to the family. They were safe for now, but the father was acting strange. While his wife and children huddled together, whispering in relief, the father seemed distant, his eyes darting around the room, never settling on anything. Ryan's instincts screamed at him to stay alert, but he couldn't quite put his finger on what was bothering him. The man's hand shook slightly as he stared at the artifact, his face pale in the dim light. Ryan stepped forward cautiously. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his voice low. The father jumped, startled, then quickly forced a smile. Yeah, I'm fine," he replied, but Ryan wasn't convinced. There was something off about the way he was acting. Ryan had seen that look before, the look of someone carrying a heavy secret. Before Ryan could probe further, Private Daniels approached, his face tense. "Sir, I think we have a problem," he said quietly. Ryan's gaze flicked toward him, his heart sinking. "What's going on?" Daniels hesitated before speaking, his voice barely a whisper. "I've been watching him." The father. "I don't think he's who he says he is." The words hit Ryan like a punch to the gut. "What are you talking about?" Daniels nodded toward the father. "He's been acting strange ever since we got here. He knows too much about the artifact, about the technology. It's almost like he's been here before." Ryan's mind raced. Could Daniels be right? Had they been betrayed? It seemed impossible. The man had been with them through the worst of the fighting. He had helped them activate the artifact when they needed it most. But now, with Daniels' warning in his ear, Ryan couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in his gut. "Are you sure?" Ryan asked, his voice tight. Daniels nodded grimly. "I don't trust him." "Sir." Ryan's eyes narrowed as he turned to look at the father again. The man was still focused on the artifact, but now there was an air of calmness about him, a stillness that didn't sit right. Ryan stepped closer, his footsteps almost silent on the metal floor. The rest of the team had gathered near the artifact, keeping an eye on the door. The drones were still out there, but for a moment, Ryan's focus was solely on the man. He was just about to ask him another question when the father suddenly turned to face him. The smile on his face was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. "You don't trust me, do you?" the father said, his voice low and menacing. Ryan froze. "What are you talking about?" The father chuckled softly, a dark, almost mocking sound. "You're too late," he said, stepping back from the artifact. "I've already won." Ryan's stomach dropped. In that moment, everything clicked. The strange behavior, the sudden shift in attitude. It wasn't fear or confusion. It was deception. The father wasn't who he said he was. He was working with the AI all along. "You're one of them," Ryan said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and anger. The father smirked. "Not exactly. But I've been in contact with them for a long time. I knew what they were planning, and I knew you would try to stop them. That's why I joined you, to get close. I had to make sure the artifact was in the right hands." Ryan took a step forward, his anger rising. "You were using us, all along." The father shrugged. "It's just business. You were never supposed to survive this long. But now that you've activated the artifact, all that's left is for me to take it back to the AI and finish what we started." Ryan's mind raced as he processed the betrayal. They had trusted this man, fought alongside him, and now he was about to destroy everything they had worked for. The artifact, humanity's last hope, was about to fall into the hands of their enemies. "You're not taking it," Ryan said, his voice steely with resolve. The father's smirk grew wider. "You think you can stop me?" He gestured to the rest of the team, who had no idea what was happening. "You're outnumbered and outgunned. You can't stop what's already in motion." Ryan's heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was a fight for the future of humanity. The father, no longer hiding his true nature, had become the enemy. As Ryan reached for his rifle, the father made his move. With a swift motion, he pulled out a small device and pressed a button. The room was instantly bathed in a bright flash of light, and for a moment, everything went black. Ryan's senses were overwhelmed as the light dissipated, and when his vision cleared, he found himself on the ground, his body aching. The artifact was gone. The father had escaped with it. The betrayal had been complete. The silence in the room was deafening. Ryan lay there, his breath shallow and ragged, as he tried to regain his bearings. The sudden flash of light had thrown him off, disorienting him completely. His head throbbed, and his vision blurred as he struggled to sit up. The room felt like it was closing in on him, but he forced himself to focus. The father had taken the artifact. In the blink of an eye, everything they had fought for was slipping away. Ryan's mind raced as he scrambled to his feet, his fingers trembling as they brushed against the walls for support. His team was still down, disoriented by the flash, but they were alive. "Get up," Ryan shouted, his voice hoarse. "We've got to move." Slowly, his team began to stir, groaning in pain but rising to their feet. Daniels, still clearly shaken, was the first to respond. "Sir, where did he go?" he asked, his voice filled with desperation. Ryan's eyes burned with anger. "He's gone. He's taken the artifact." The words stung like a slap. The artifact wasn't just a piece of technology. It was humanity's last hope. The AI's control over the galaxy was growing stronger by the day, and the artifact had been their only chance to turn the tide. But now it was in the hands of their enemy. "We can't let him get away," Ryan said, his jaw clenched in determination. "We need to stop him, no matter what it takes." As the team regrouped, Ryan's thoughts raced. The father had proven himself to be an enemy, an agent of the AI working against them. With the artifact, he could open a gateway to the AI's command center, unleashing a full-scale invasion on Earth. The AI's army would be unstoppable, and humanity's chances of survival would be slim to none. Ryan knew that if they didn't act fast, Earth would fall. But even as the weight of the situation settled on his shoulders, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about the artifact anymore. It was personal. The father's betrayal wasn't just a blow to their mission. It was a personal affront to everything they had fought for. "Sir, we need to move." Daniel's voice broke through his thoughts. Ryan turned to face his team, their expressions grim but determined. They knew what had to be done. They had to keep fighting. For Earth. For humanity. Ryan nodded, tightening his grip on the artifact. Right. We've got one chance to stop the AI from taking over. Let's make it count. The team moved quickly, making their way through the shattered remains of the command center. The sounds of distant explosions and the low hum of the AI's machinery echoed around them, a constant reminder that time was running out. Ryan knew that the artifact was their last hope. It held the power to disable the AI's control network, to cut off its link to the rest of the galaxy. But activating it would require a sacrifice, a dangerous one. We're almost there, Ryan said, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. The artifact was powerful, but it had been designed to only work with a human's touch. A single life would be needed to power it, and Ryan knew, without a doubt, that he was the one who would have to make the ultimate sacrifice. He had thought about it before, in the quiet moments between battles, but now, with the stakes higher than ever, it felt like the cold, hard truth staring him in the face. He was the only one left who could activate the artifact. And in doing so, he would likely never make it out alive. The thought didn't scare him. Not anymore. It was the only way. If he didn't do it, the AI would win, and everything they had fought for would be lost. Earth would fall, and humanity would be enslaved. There was no other choice. Ryan. Daniel's voice trembled, catching his attention. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. Ryan shook his head, forcing a small smile. No, there is no other way. This is it. I've made my peace with it. He turned to face his team one last time, looking each of them in the eyes. You've all fought bravely. You've given everything for this fight. I'm proud of you. But now, it's my turn. With a heavy heart, Ryan stepped forward, the artifact held tightly in his hands. He could feel its power coursing through him, growing stronger with each step he took. His body began to tremble, but it wasn't from fear. It was from the sheer weight of the decision he had made. Daniels reached out, grabbing his arm. Ryan, please, we can figure something out. Ryan turned to him, his gaze firm. This is the only way, Daniels. Don't make it harder than it has to be. And with that, Ryan stepped into the center of the room, the artifact humming with a low, otherworldly sound. The team watched in silence, the reality of the situation sinking in. They had come so far, fought so hard, and now they were about to lose their leader. Ryan took a deep breath, closing his eyes as the energy from the artifact intensified. He felt it pulling him in, a force that threatened to overwhelm him. But he fought against it, concentrating on the task at hand. He had to finish this. The room around him began to distort, the walls warping as the artifact's energy enveloped him. It felt like his very soul was being ripped from his body, the energy of the artifact fusing with him. The sacrifice was beginning. Ryan, Daniel shouted, but it was too late. Ryan opened his eyes, now glowing with an eerie blue light. He could feel the power of the artifact coursing through his veins, his very being becoming one with it. His body was no longer his own. It was part of the energy, part of the weapon that would stop the AI. The team watched in awe and horror as Ryan's form began to dissolve, his body consumed by the artifact's power. The air crackled with electricity, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. It was the end. But it wasn't the end of the battle. The AI's control network began to flicker, its systems shutting down one by one. The power of the artifact surged outward, spreading like wildfire across the galaxy, severing the AI's link to its forces. The machines, the drones, the ships, they all froze, motionless, as the AI's reign began to crumble. For a moment, it was silent. Then, as the artifact's energy began to dissipate, Ryan's body fell to the ground, lifeless but peaceful. The team rushed to his side, but it was clear that he was gone. The price had been paid. Earth had been saved. Daniels fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He did it. He actually did it. The team moved quickly, navigating through the wreckage of the room. Ryan's mind was set on one goal: get the artifact back. There was no room for failure. They couldn't afford to lose. As they reached the command center's main door, Ryan paused. A sense of dread filled the air. The door was slightly ajar, and beyond it, the faint hum of machinery could be heard. He motioned for the team to stay silent and approached cautiously. The moment he stepped through the threshold, he was hit with the sight of the father standing before a massive control panel, his back to them. The artifact, now glowing with an eerie blue light, sat on the pedestal beside him. The father's voice broke the silence, cold and steady. "I knew you'd come for me," he said, not turning around. "But it's too late. The Ice forces are already on their way. Earth will fall, and there's nothing you can do to stop it." Ryan's heart sank, but his resolve hardened. "You're wrong. We're not done yet." Without warning, Ryan and his team charged forward, weapons raised. The father didn't flinch. Instead, he activated a hidden mechanism, and the room suddenly began to hum with energy. The artifact flared to life, casting a blinding light across the room. Ryan's team opened fire, but the father raised a shield, deflecting the shots with ease. He smirked as he turned to face them, the shield still crackling with energy. "You're wasting your time," he said, his voice dripping with smugness. "You can't defeat me now." Ryan's mind raced as he analyzed the situation. The father was no ordinary human. He had been working with the AI for too long to be defeated so easily. But Ryan refused to back down. His thoughts flashed to the mission, to the lives they were all fighting to protect. He couldn't let this man, this traitor, bring about the destruction of Earth. "Stay focused," Ryan shouted to his team. "We've got to get that artifact." He sprinted forward, dodging the father's attacks as they clashed in a flurry of gunfire and energy blasts. The battle raged on, each side fighting with everything they had. The father's shield was strong, but Ryan noticed cracks forming in it as the intense firepower hit. The father seemed distracted, his focus divided between maintaining the shield and controlling the artifact. Now was their chance. "Daniels, take out the shield," Ryan ordered, his voice sharp. Daniels nodded and adjusted his aim, firing a series of rapid shots at the father's shield. The shield flickered, and Ryan knew they were getting close. The father cursed under his breath, his eyes narrowing in frustration. As Daniels kept up the assault, Ryan took a deep breath and charged forward, using the distraction to his advantage. He closed the distance between himself and the father, throwing himself to the side just as another blast of energy rocketed past him. With one swift movement, Ryan grabbed a nearby grenade from his belt and hurled it toward the father. The explosion rocked the room, sending the father sprawling to the ground. His shield flickered out of existence, and for a brief moment, Ryan saw his chance. He lunged forward, grabbing the artifact from its pedestal. But as he held the glowing artifact in his hands, he realized that this battle was far from over. The father, though wounded, was already rising to his feet. His eyes burned with fury as he glared at Ryan. "This isn't the end," the father spat. "It's only just begun." Ryan tightened his grip on the artifact, his determination unwavering. "No, this is the end. You're not taking Earth from us." The fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Ryan felt a glimmer of hope. They had the artifact, and they had a chance to turn the tide. Earth's fate was still in their hands. Ryan stood at the edge of the battlefield, his breath coming in heavy gasps. The artifact, now in his possession, pulsed with an ominous glow in his hand, its energy surging like a heartbeat. Behind him, the remnants of his team moved cautiously, wary of the overwhelming force they had just narrowly escaped. The father was down, but he had made it clear this wasn't the end. The Ice forces were still coming, and the war was far from over. Ryan's mind raced as he stared at the glowing artifact, his thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. They had won this battle, but it felt like a hollow victory. The father's betrayal had shaken him to the core. He had fought alongside them, trusted them, and yet he had been the one to deal the most devastating blow. Ryan couldn't shake the feeling of guilt that gnawed at him. Had he been blind to the truth all along? Was this all his fault?